like to move forward. And I would like to invite Dr. G.S. Sangamitra ma'am. She is a consultant neonatologist at Noori Multispeciality Hospital, Vijayawada. Ma'am, I would like you to take over.
Yeah. Thank you, Apurvi. So a very good afternoon to one and all. So today I will be talking about CPAP, and I would mainly be concentrating on monitoring and nursing care of CPAP. So basically CPAP is nothing but continuous positive airway pressure or continuous distending pressure that we apply to the neonate who has respiratory distress. My presentation will be along the lines of physiology of CPAP and its indications, initiation of CPAP, weaning, failure, what is failure of CPAP, and lastly, monitoring of babies on CPAP and nursing care. So basically, what are the physiological effects of CPAP is when you apply continuous distending pressure to a spontaneously breathing neonate. So what happens is this pressure helps in recruiting additional alveoli, it splints the airways, and that helps in prevention of atelectasis by causing increase in functional residual capacity. So when a baby has respiratory distress, generally the baby grunts or has tachypnea. So baby grunts because baby is trying to maintain adequate functional residual capacity. So that is done by applying this continuous distending pressure. And we can also use CPAP in babies with apnea, wherein CPAP helps in splinting the airways and diaphragm and stabilizes the chest wall, thus regularizing the respiratory rate. And also by decreasing the pulmonary vascular resistance, CPAP improves oxygenation, decreases intrapulmonary shunting, and it also conserves surfactant and causes improved lung growth. So there are so many various important effects of CPAP that would mainly play a role in babies with respiratory distress. And I think in the present era, CPAP is the first, the most important modality of non-invasive ventilation for babies in NICU. So it is very important for us to not only know the physiology of CPAP or know how to start CPAP, but I think the success of CPAP mainly depends on how you are monitoring a baby on CPAP, identifying acute deterioration, and also nurses play a very important role. They are mainly the crux because they are the ones who spend maximum time with the babies in our NICUs, and success or failure of CPAP to a very large extent, other than because of the disease process, depends mainly on nursing care. So what are the indications of CPAP? I think the prime requisite for CPAP is that the baby should have spontaneous respiratory efforts. So when the baby has spontaneous respiratory efforts, we start CPAP for those babies with respiratory distress, recurrent apneas, or post-extubation as a modality to wean off from mechanical ventilation. You use as a post-extubation modality when you're weaning a baby from mechanical ventilation. And in those babies with respiratory distress syndrome per se, starting CPAP early is the norm. I think early CPAP helps in better conservation of surfactant, and the studies have shown that starting early CPAP in babies with respiratory distress syndrome actually cuts the surfactant use by almost 50%. So it is very important, not only for the in the baby's point of view, but also through logistics and financially, you can cut down on surfactant use by starting early CPAP. And what are the contraindications for CPAP is that basically neonates with poor respiratory efforts, congenital diaphragmatic hernia, tracheoesophageal fistula, choanal atresia, and those with severe cardiovascular instability, I do not resort to CPAP as a modality of non-invasive ventilation. You generally tend to intubate all these babies. So what are the essentials of prerequisites for starting CPAP? So the steps of initiation of CPAP is firstly to prepare the circuit, the bubble chamber, and the machine. Then you should know, most importantly, about the interface. The interface includes the nasal prongs and mask along with adequate and appropriate fixation of the cap. So once you know about the interface, then you start connecting the circuit. Then finally, after everything is done, you set your pressure. There are three settings that you have to look at in the CPAP. That is setting the pressure. Second one is setting your FiO2 based on baby saturation. And third is adjusting the flow. So after all this, then you insert the orogastric tube. These are basically the essentials when you're starting a CPAP. So how do you prepare the circuit? So basically when you're looking at the circuit, When you're looking at the circuit, I think you need to go in a stepwise manner. Here it is one, that is you should always look at air and oxygen lines, and you have to fix your air and oxygen lines so as to blend the air and oxygen that is going to go to the baby. So without blending, you cannot give 100% oxygen to the baby. You have to blend these two so as to give that adequate amount of oxygen that is required to maintain saturation of the baby above 90% up to 95%. So to maintain this saturation, if you need just 40% or 30% or 50%, whatever percentage of FiO2 you require, you have to give to the baby. And so to give the desired oxygen, you need to blend air and oxygen. And the second one is the flow meter. Now generally we fix the flow at 5 liters for babies when you start on bubble CPAP. Then you connect the circuit which goes into the humidifier. The inspiratory limb goes into the humidifier. That is, the air that is coming from the air and oxygen is going to be humidified in the humidifier, and then it is going to be supplied to the baby. So a humidifier is a very important part of CPAP. And then the expiratory limb. This is the expiratory limb, and this expiratory limb will go into the water chamber. So you fill the water chamber up to a desired level. Generally, this is marked on the chamber that you're using, and then you adjust your CPAP pressure in this bubble CPAP by the insertion depth of the expiratory limb. Suppose you want to give CPAP of 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. Based on the depth of insertion, you determine how much CPAP you're giving to the baby. So this is basically the circuit, and how you have to connect in the circuit will be shown in the skill video that I have actually downloaded from FDNC, that was done by AIMS. So that video clearly explains how you have to connect a CPAP circuit. And the next most important thing is securing and connecting your interface. So what secures an interface when for a baby on CPAP is basically the cap. So you have different sizes of cap. So you first have to measure the head circumference of the baby with a tape and look at the different sizes of cap that are available. And then based on where the head circumference falls, you can select that size cap and then fix it to the baby. So the next one is the interface per se. So interface, you can use either the nasal prongs or the nasal mask. So to use the nasal prongs or the mask, you already have a guiding scale that will be supplied generally in the circuit. So that guiding scale will help us decide which size prongs or mask that we want to start for the baby. So if it is the prongs, then you select the size based on the diameter of the nares and the distance between the two nares. So based on that, you put the scale on the baby's nares, and based on that, you can select the appropriate size prongs. And for the mask, based on the size of the nose is how you select the appropriate sized mask. So once you select your interface and identify the correct size, you just have to put the mask and connect the interface to the CPAP, that CPAP circuit that you have already connected. So once everything is in place, then you set your flow, SpO2 and the CPAP that you want to set based on the baby's condition. So once you start CPAP, how do you know whether the CPAP is adequate or not? Firstly, when you start CPAP, if the CPAP is adequate, the baby is generally comfortable. That is the first sign that you have to look for. Then the baby has minimal or no chest retractions. That is the reason. If that is the indication, respiratory distress is the indication for what you have started CPAP, then the distress must have settled with the CPAP that you're giving. The baby stops grunting, the retractions come down. So these are the signs of that indicate that you have started adequate CPAP. And baby is hemodynamically stable. That is very important. So baby has normal CFT, blood pressure and pulses. And next is baby's saturation is between 90 to 94 if you're giving adequate oxygen, and your blood gas is near normal. So these are the signs of adequate CPAP that you have to look for. At least one of them is not right, then you have to think of what you're not doing right. That is very, very important. Then once you have started adequate CPAP, your disease process starts, progressing or reducing, whatever. So based on that, how do you wean a baby from CPAP? So you can see the flow diagram. So suppose you start a baby on a CPAP of 6 with FiO2 of around 50 to 60%. Then slowly as the retractions settle and FiO2 comes down, you have to start reducing your CPAP in steps of 1. So once the retraction settle, you can start coming down or in your CPAP in steps of 1 and reducing the FiO2 based on adequate saturations between 90 to 95%. Suppose the baby is saturating 9900, you can slowly come down on your FiO2. And finally, when you have reached a CPAP of 4 and FiO2 between 21 to 30%, then it is a time or it is indicated that you can safely wean off from CPAP. So when you wean off from CPAP, you should also see that the baby is hemodynamically stable, is not currently having any other medical conditions like PBO or sepsis. And the nurses are better judges to tell you that baby has tolerated CPAP for 15 minutes or more during the morning care time or when they are giving cluster care to the baby. So once you have ticked off all these boxes, then it is time for you to wean off from CPAP. So suppose when you're weaning off from CPAP, if baby is requiring some oxygen, then you can wean off to low flow oxygen, or sometimes you can even wean off to HFNC if it is available. And this is how you wean a baby off CPAP. So when you start a baby on CPAP, how do you know that this CPAP is not sufficient for the baby? That is, this baby on CPAP is failing. Or it is time to initiate ventilation. So CPAP failure is considered when FiO2 required is greater than 60% and pressure required is greater than 7 centimeters of water. Suppose even at 7 centimeters of water, baby is still having retractions and grunting, then you know that this CPAP is not sufficient for the baby. And with an FiO2 of 60% also, if the baby is not maintaining saturation, then it is an indication that you need to go to mechanical ventilation. But then, before you consider or you realize that it is time to start mechanical ventilation, you should have made sure that you have given adequate CPAP to the baby. So how can you make sure that you're giving adequate CPAP to the baby is comfortable on the CPAP. That is what we have discussed previously. So baby is not finding the CPAP interface. And RM position. Your humidification is adequate and there is no condensation in the circuit, which is very important because if there is condensation in your circuit, then your pressure delivered is not delivering correctly to the baby. Then you're giving adequate pressure and FiO2 that are delivered to the baby through your prongs or your interface is correctly fixed in position. The neck position of the baby is right. The neck is not too flexed or hyperextended, and the prongs are not blocked with secretions. So with all these prerequisites, if still the baby is requiring FiO2 of more than 60% and pressures greater than 7 centimeters of water, then it is a clear indication that the CPAP is not sufficient for the baby or it is failure of CPAP and you need to initiate ventilation. So when the baby is on CPAP, how do you monitor and give nursing care? So monitoring and nursing care are two very important aspects of the baby on CPAP. I think they largely determine the success or failure of CPAP. So how do you monitor the babies? Through clinical assessment of blood gas exchange, radiological assessment, monitoring for complications and troubleshooting. So we first started monitoring. What is the importance of monitoring? Monitoring is desired or required to know if you have used the right settings on the CPAP to accurately identify CPAP failure and initiate ventilation without letting the baby deteriorate further. And for early weaning of CPAP, that is, once the baby, the disease process has settled, then you have to wean the CPAP off early, and also to identify and, adequately treat your complications of CPAP. So how do you clinically assess the babies on CPAP? First thing is respiratory status monitoring. I think for any monitoring, because there are multiple people who change shifts and there are multiple people who take care of the baby over the day or over the baby stay in the NICU, we need to have an objective systems or objective assessment that are properly documented. Because what the previous person has done, you will not know unless you look at the documentation. It is correctly documented. So respiratory status monitoring, you can use objective scores like Downey score or Silverman-Anderson score, and you need to document the scoring periodically. That is, you take every 4 hours or every shift. You can design your own periodic way of documenting, and it should be documented in the baby's case sheet. And other than respiratory status monitoring, for a baby on CPAP, you need to monitor for vitals, various other respiratory parameters, oxygen requirement, and saturation. So you have to use monitoring charts, not because it is a sort of documentation for ethical purposes, but I think this monitoring helps us in knowing the progress of the baby at one look of the case sheet. So monitoring charts are very important, and monitoring charts should be done periodically, not at the end of the shift you write 3-4 values as you keep on looking at periods. So it should be done periodically at that point of time after assessing the baby, which is very, very important. Then next, you need to have assessment of blood gas. It is definitely necessary, but you can look at when to do the blood gas. Suppose you start the baby on CPAP, you have an initial blood gas value. You decide, by looking at that, you decide when next you are supposed to do blood gas. Suppose the ABG is relatively fine and baby is improving, then I think you can forego blood gas also sometimes. But suppose you feel the disease process is progressing, the baby is borderline, you need to look at whether the baby is going to fail or not. Then you can, you can decide on when to do blood gas next. Suppose 4th hourly or 6th hourly or 12th hourly based on the baby's condition. And once you see the blood gas trends, then you will understand the baby's status better. The next is radiological assessment. Radiological assessment generally is to know about the underlying disease process, but also to look at the lung volume expansion once you have started continuous descending pressure or CPAP, and not only to look at lung expansion, it is also helpful to look at other complications of CPAP like air leaks or any other new disease process like babies having a new onset pneumonia. And the other complication is, of reduced cardiac output due to hyperinflation. You look at heart size, then you look at the OG tube tip in the stomach, and you can also look at abdominal distension, that is distension because of CPAP belly. So you can identify CPAP belly also. So for all these purposes, radiological assessment is definitely necessary. Then you need to monitor for complications. To monitor, you need to understand what complications that you have to look out for. There are air leaks like pneumothorax, mediastinum. Then reduced cardiac output. You need to look for pulses. You need to look for blood pressure, because if the chest is hyperinflated, sometimes you get reduced cardiac output and it can result in hypertension and shock. The most important and commonest thing that you have to look for and cannot afford to miss is nasal injuries. Because of the interface, whether you're using the prongs or the mask, the nasal injuries are a very common complication. So you have to look at nasal injuries, not because you have to understand whether they are occurring or not, but to know various ways that you can prevent them, and also to prevent them from progression once it has occurred. Another one is CPAP belly. So you have to know these, be aware of all these complications that can occur, so that you can vigilantly monitor for them. Then troubleshooting. What is troubleshooting? Basically, troubleshooting is you need to be aware of the problems that can occur, then how they present. Just because you know these are the complications, you cannot identify unless you know how they present in the baby. Then once you know how they present, you need to recognize them and manage them appropriately. This is basically the 3 steps of troubleshooting. And this is important for a baby on CPAP when you are monitoring for complications. Then what are the patient-related and equipment-related problems that you can anticipate when a baby is started on CPAP? Is that the patient-related problems are worsening of the disease process. Suppose you have started a baby on CPAP for respiratory distress. If the respiratory distress is worsening, then that is a patient-related problem. You need to identify for it. How can you identify? You can put your monitoring charts, and once the score keeps on increasing, then you know something is not going right, or oxygen requirement starts increasing, or pressure requirement starts increasing. Then you can identify that there's something going wrong. You might need to take an X-ray, or you might initiate ventilation, whatever the situation demands. And then the other thing is apneas, because if there are severe and prolonged apneas, you have to remember that the prerequisite for starting a baby on CPAP is good respiratory efforts. So if there are frequent apneas, sometimes the CPAP might not work. Then complications like pneumothorax and CPAP belly or abdominal distension. These are the patient-related problems that you have to look for. So what are the equipment-related problems? First commonest thing that we encounter in our daily practice is circuit leak or disconnection. Suppose the temperature probe that you have connected to the humidifier has just dislodged. Then your CPAP is not delivering to the baby, and obviously that baby deteriorates. Then you will think of worsening disease process, but the exact problem is a circuit leak here. And so first thing is circuit leak. Then the next one is inadequate air oxygen flow in the airlines or oxygen lines, which is very, very common and the main bottleneck nowadays in most units. And the next is inappropriate setting. Suppose the baby has severe retractions and requires CPAP of 6 or 7, you might have started just on CPAP of 4. So these inappropriate settings, humidifier malfunctions and alarms, and sometimes the prongs might have been obstructed or displaced at the level of the interface, so CPAP might not be delivering. So these are the equipment related problems that you need to be aware, so that you first look at them when you feel the CPAP is not working or the baby is failing CPAP. So for that you need to remember the circuit and just go one by one in steps. First look at air and oxygen, then look at your flow meter, then look at your humidifier, then your prongs, then your water bath. So all these things you can go in a stepwise manner, so that you need to have an adequate knowledge of the circuit. So how are all these problems present? I think all these problems present as one thing, that is worsening of distress or oxygen requirement. Sometimes if it is severe enough, then it can cause acute deterioration of the baby as cardiorespiratory compromise. So when any of these three things happen, then you know something is not going right, and you want to look for any patient related problems or equipment related problems. So I have devised a small mnemonic for this. Actually, DOPE is a mnemonic for failure, acute deterioration of a baby on ventilator. But if you just add D to it, it is DOPE-B. So D refers to displacement of the prongs. O refers to obstruction of the prongs due to secretions. P refers to pneumothorax or other complications of CPAP. E refers to equipment failure. W represents worsening of the disease process, and E refers to the efforts, that is the respiratory efforts. So any of these, you just go in a stepwise manner and keep checking on those boxes, so that you know that the baby is, there is you identify the cause of why the baby is deteriorating on CPAP. And then next, coming to the nursing care. The next problem is, what is the nurse's role in when you start a baby on CPAP? I think the nurses play a very, very important role. As I have told you previously, nurses are the backbone to determine the success of CPAP, because they are the ones who are taking care of the babies. For most of the time, the physician just comes, the neonatologist or the pediatrician just comes, does rounds, identifies at that point of time, and goes off. But I think nurses are the ones who are continuously with the baby, and I think their capability to identify any deterioration or any problem with CPAP is more. So they can come to respiratory care, they can assess the neonate, they can stabilize the CPAP device, they can look at any problems with humidification and suctioning, which they only do. So assessment is definitely, monitoring and documentation plays a very important role, and the doctor should inform them when to inform the doctor. Suppose your respiratory rate is going above 70, then this is the time they have to inform the doctor. So this is what they should be aware of. We are supposed to educate them so that they inform the doctor at a timely manner. You can use such monitoring charts in your units. And then stabilization of the CPAP device. To stabilize or to understand any equipment related problems, I think their knowledge of circuit, they should be familiar with the circuit and how the device works, and prevent accidental dislodgement of the circuits. And they can handle troubleshooting with respect to certain device related problems. And they also should play a role in selection of appropriate size interface and fix them correctly, because this determines adequate CPAP. And next, most important thing is humidification, because it is totally in their control. They should make sure that the humidifier, heating wire and temperature probes are working firstly. Then periodically check the water level in the humidifier chamber and drain out in the expiratory lip. And be familiar with various alarms in the humidifier, so that they know what is going wrong when an alarm counts off. In suctioning, they should be taught the right method of suctioning. So pressure not more than 100 millimeters of mercury. It should be done only in the presence of visible secretions, and blockage of prongs with thick secretions is to be identified and corrected. Then coming to skin care. As I have told you, nasal injuries are the biggest challenge when you start the baby on CPAP. So what can reduce these nasal injuries is selection of appropriate size interface, correct fixation of the interface, use of hydrocolloid shields to prevent skin damage, and the most important thing is periodic assessment, objective grading, and documentation of nasal injuries. This is very, very important. So you can have these pictures in your units, put them so that the sister can grade the nasal injuries. So that why should we grade these nasal injuries? So that we know how the nasal injuries are progressing, or you can devise some method to prevent them, or you can teach your nurses how effectively to manage them. So this is very important, and you have various grading of nasal injuries, and you can use any of those charts. Then one important way to prevent is you can use barrier prevention by applying hydrocolloid. So some are commercially available, which are costly, but you can just take a deodorant that is available everywhere and devise your own methods of barrier. See, this is the way we do it in our unit when we apply prongs for the babies. And this is how we apply deodorant when you use mask as an interface. So this will help in elevating the pressure on the skin when you are applying these interfaces, and to a certain extent can prevent nasal injuries. Then nutrition is a very important part of any baby in the NICU, and the nurse should properly position and fix the orogastric tube. Air should be aspirated prior to feeding, and abdominal distension or CPAP belly should be identified and intimated to the doctor. Then pain assessment. Pain assessment comes into play for babies on CPAP, because adequate CPAP is when the baby is comfortable on CPAP. But if the baby is not comfortable on CPAP or starting to get uncomfortable on CPAP, then by using these pain scales, you can identify it early. So this should be made a practice to document at least once per shift for babies on CPAP. The next most important thing is infection control practices. So strict hand washing practices, use of hand rubs, regularly reinforcing the nurses will definitely go a long way in preventing infection. And particular attention should be given to adopting aseptic precautions while suctioning, and also handling interfaces and circuits. So with that, we come to the end of my presentation, and to conclude, we have to remember that CPAP, or continuous descending pressure, refers to application of pressure both during inspiration and expiration, and prerequisite is a spontaneously breathing baby. And the next is while starting CPAP for a newborn with RDS, the earlier it is started, the better. And appropriate humidification and blending of air and oxygen are the bottlenecks when you're taking care of such babies. And timely identification of CPAP failure and initiation of ventilation is necessary, and adequate monitoring and nursing care determine the success of CPAP. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the presentation.